Hi, everyone. Welcome to the briefing room. I'm Brian Esty, your host. We have Josh Rodriguez with us today. He's our Senior Manager of Service Automation and Delivery. He's here to expand on the question that we talked about during the bite sized brief recently. You want to kind of dig into that a little bit with me, Josh? So the question is, what would break if key people left tomorrow?
Everything breaks. No, so a lot of times you have these key players who have the keys to the kingdom. They know how every process works. They know every route and every decision and every risk that occurs throughout an organization. And if somebody like that were to A, leave, B, hit by a bus, or C, just go on vacation for a long time, that company will ground to a halt because oftentimes the processes aren't written down, playbooks aren't created, SOPs aren't generated, and so you have a failure on the company to ensure that process can pick up regardless of who's in that seat.
Yeah, that sounds like such a scary moment for companies. I feel like we've been in that situation before and gone into it with clients, and we've seen these sort of things in actions. Can you talk to me a little bit more about some of the horror stories that we've kind of run into around that?
Yes, so there are quite a few of those. We came into a client and we took over their technology operations. They had one individual who did everything. He was a jack of all trades, and for anonymity's sake, we're not going to talk about our clients' names or anything like that. That's just a forefront there. But anyway, so this individual, did all of their operations for the technology side. However, they weren't accountable, nor were they doing everything that they were supposed to be doing. So oftentimes they'd come in late, they would leave early, they'd take long lunches. So the company decided to let them go. What they didn't realize is that user had access to all of their systems. That user had all of the passwords. That user had all of the knowledge about how things actually worked. So we had to come in, relearn everything about their operations, and then put in place practices to ensure that those things didn't fail in the future. We wrote SOPs, we wrote run books, we actually put a key vault in place so that way passwords wouldn't get lost and they wouldn't be dependent on any individual user.
Oh, wow. How long did that process take?
Took about 3 to 6 months because we didn't know about all of the things that person had their hands in until after they left, and even then, we were still like, "Okay, well, now this is something new that we didn't realize we had to take care of," like DNS registration. We didn't realize that they were part of that too, and they were the only ones, or the domain registration, their Entra ID stuff, one of their standalone services that they did, we didn't realize that they had an admin account to that as well.
So that's just a ton of time, effort, and money wasted because these things weren't documented. So what are things that companies could do to get in front of this sort of problem so that it doesn't happen to them?
Don't silo your engineers. Don't silo your divisions. A lot of this you see in the military too. In my experience, it's two-person authentication, right? Two-factor authentication or two people requirement. So you have more than one person doing a certain job. And oftentimes you'll have to make sure that if that one person's not there, they have a backup or make sure the process is written down. So doing a thorough review of your entire infrastructure and organization to make sure that every process you have has an SOP behind it, has a playbook behind it, has a run book behind it, has some sort of documentation on how to do that in the event that that person who's the primary subject matter expert just disappears off the face of the earth is paramount. So getting in front of that and doing that will save you a lot of headache in the end.
Sounds like a lot of money and time, which is really, really important. Can you talk to me a little bit more about some of the key factors that change when somebody leaves?
Decision making, like who's the new decision maker for X, Y, and Z product, right? Risk acceptance as well. So if there's a new risk, now you have a new person in that position who's doing either A, the risk mitigation, B, the risk registry piece, or C, the risk acceptance. Depending upon who is new into that system or where it's at, that will be where you want to make sure you have those playbooks, those knowledge repositories.
Gotcha. What about privilege mapping? I feel like that might be an issue that we need to address as well.
So oftentimes you'll have people who sit in a system administrative role. They know who gets mapped to what privilege. They know who's in what group, who has what level of access. So if they were to leave and they didn't have any of this stuff written down, now you have onboarding that's taking excess amounts of time. You have people who can't do their jobs because they're not given the right privileges because this person, Jim Jones, we're going to just call him Jim Jones as an example, is on vacation and he didn't write down what department the telemetry department is supposed to have access to. Or you have Tommy Sue, who's in charge of their PIM approvals, and now the privileged access isn't being approved on a timely manner. So if you don't have a backup, if you don't have a run book or something that shows how the process is supposed to work, and it comes down to governance too, then you're going to have a failure. And it's going to cost you time and money to find out what that process is and fix it with the documentation.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like in this day and age with all these things that need to be documented, is there any way to like fast track all of that? Is there any sort of automation that we plug in or that we can help with?
So for Teller, we like to do automation first, but governance always. So anytime we're looking at a process or something that somebody's doing, we can leverage Power Automate. So Power Automate has the feature to look at a manual process and create an automation behind it. It gives you all the granular steps, like exactly for like the person opened this program, clicked on here, typed this in. This is the expected output, right? Automate's great for that. But oftentimes we have to manually, and this is with a pen and paper or on a whiteboard, map out that process. So we grab user B from department C and say, explain to me verbatim from step A to step, 100 million, how you do your position. And it's not us wanting to take over their position. It's not us wanting to replace their position. It's us understanding, okay, this is how they do this. Is there an SOP in place in the event that this person isn't here? This is how they do this. We have this SOP. Is there some sort of automation we can put in place to make sure that if they don't do their job because they're out, that the automation can be kicked in automatically to take over that in the interim, right? But the key thing with automation is you always want to have the human in the loop. The automation is only going to do what you tell it to, and it could fail a lot of times. So you want that human in the loop as well.
That makes sense. So not only is it super important to document all this stuff and make sure that we understand what's happening in these key roles, it's also really helpful to have that automation in place so that nothing really goes unnoticed and fails and falls through the cracks in case somebody leaves. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Josh, and for sharing your wisdom, insight, and experience. Any parting thoughts or words of wisdom that you might want to share with our audience before we wrap this up?
Yes, your subject matter experts, otherwise known as SMEs, they hold the keys to the kingdom. So be sure that they write down their knowledge. They're great at their job. They're going to be your backbone a lot of the times, but make sure they write it down. That's the best thing that can be for both you and them.
Yep, words of wisdom we can all live by. Thanks so much again, Josh. Really, really helpful, really, really insightful. Just really enjoyed our time together. Thanks again, and until next time, this has been The Briefing Room.